What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing a long-term review on the COMP Xtreme MT2s. These things have had a hard life and I want to give you my real-world review on what my opinions, what I like, what I don't like about these tires, so stick around. Now, these tires are, like I said, the COMP Xtreme MT2s. They are a 40, 13, 50, 17. They are DOT approved, load range C, tri-ply sidewalls. Now, these tires started off in 2018 on Nate from Dirt Lifestyle, his TJ. He owned these for about a year or maybe a little more than a year. And then in 2019, I purchased these from Nate and installed them on my TJ right before King of the Hammers in 2019. Now, I've used these tires a ton over the last 4 years, all the way down to Southern California, to Moab, to local trails here in Washington, Eastern Washington. I feel that I am in a good place in order to give you a really true, honest review on this tire. So these tires, this wheel combo right here is 156 pounds per tire. So I get myself in a lot of situations where my front end gets really light. So I believe having a large, heavy wheel and tire package like this one is actually helping me. I run these tires at 8 PSI, sometimes 6 in the snow. I'll go even lower because I have the bead locks. I'm not worried about it. So let's start out with the mud rating. These tires have seen a ton of mud. As I live in Washington, most of the wheeling that we have here in Washington is mud. So they have the big wide voids that you'd see on a typical mud terrain that's going to fling the mud out so it doesn't get packed in. It ejects the mud just fine. But some of the mud here in Washington is basically like clay. So it doesn't really matter what you do. It's going to stack it into those grooves and it's going to pack it in and you're not going to have any traction. But on the average, these are a very good mud terrain. I would not say the best. So I mean, in the best, you're going with your super swampers that you're sacrificing a lot of other aspects when you go to swampers, especially boggers. As far as boggers go, I would give, like a bogger is probably a 9 or a 10 rating because that's literally all they're made for. They're really not good at anything else but mud, kind of those specialty tires. Another note to watch out for with boggers is side hilling. So if you're in really slippery mud at an angle, you can just slide straight off. And that I've seen that in person many times and it's kind of scary to watch. So overall in mud, I would give these tires an 8, just like I would give pretty much any other modern mud terrain tire are going to be in that 7 or 8 range in my opinion. So let's talk about road mannerism. So I do not drive this on the road a whole lot, but I have driven a decent amount on highways. I drove it all week in Moab and over mountain passes to Leavenworth and back. So these have seen a good amount of road miles. And from my understanding, these have a 40,000 mile tread wear warranty, which is really good for a mud terrain tire. So that being said, these are unbalanced and really worn out. I can drive 60 miles an hour on the highway, no problem. Road noise is a concern with any mud terrain. It is not super noisy, to be honest. It's not crazy. It's just like any typical other mud terrain. So in the wet and stuff like that, I would say a lot of other tires are way better than this. The siping is pretty lacking in this. They're pretty large sipes and not very many of them. So if you are going to drive like a mud terrain like this daily, I would take it in and get them siped professionally so you can get a little bit better traction in the wet conditions. So I mean, for the road, we're talking like maybe a 6 or 7, 6, because just for the fact that I can run these 60 miles an hour down the freeway, no vibrations with 0 weights at all, which is really miraculous in and of itself. Now let's talk about sand. I've been to the dunes a few times with this. You air it down really low. I think I was at maybe 6 PSI in the sand and it did work really well. I never got stuck, did all the hill climbs I wanted to do, and I had an absolute blast, and there's really not much I would change with it. Another thing to think about in the sand, as the compound of the tire is softer, that sand is just going to eat through that tread really quickly. So if you have like a sticky tire or something that has a little bit softer of tread, and you do the dunes a lot, you're going to be going through a lot of tires. So for the sand, I would probably give this a 7 or an 8. It's pretty darn good, and the only way to get much better is to get a very specific tire just for sand. And that's going to be the case in most of these scenarios, as these do really well. But obviously, if you get a tire that's made specifically for one purpose, i.e. mud, sand, rocks, things like that, they're obviously going to outperform this tire and any other tire in this standard mud terrain platform. So let's talk about snow. I did a ton of snow this season, and these tires were absolutely amazing. Anytime we went in the snow, I had no issues. I never got stuck. Like, again, airing down is huge. So I think I was probably maybe 4 psi in the snow, and it works really well. And obviously in snow, it really does depend on the kind of snow. You got lots of different types of snow. In Washington, we get all the different types because it'll snow, it'll be powdery, then it'll rain on top of it, then it'll freeze. But overall on the snow, I think this is a solid 8 for sure. And going up to something that's a dedicated snow tire, you're gonna get that 9 or 10. Which, what is that? Tracks. I don't know what else is a dedicated snow tire besides running a track. So I would say these are a solid 8, maybe a 9 in the snow for sure. Now let's talk about rocks. Just like snow, there is different types of rocks. They are different type sticky rocks like Moab. And just like most tires, they stick to the rocks and they just work. And like the rocks in Moab are cheating. It's if you've never been there, it's like sandpaper. And the tires just climb up everything. You really don't need a dedicated sticky tire for the rocks in most of Moab. And like Johnson Valley, you've got a lot of jagged rocks that these sidewalls are one of the most impressive things of these tires. We have jammed these into rocks. There's a lot of cuts and nicks and things that I thought that you look at it and you're like, this tire is done. And I still air it down to 8 psi, 6 psi, and beat on it in the snow and the rocks, and I still have not had a blowout. And I'm very impressed with the sidewall on these, and that's one of my favorite things about these is the sidewall. How solid the sidewalls are, jamming these things into rocks where you think, hey, this is done, and it just has not happened yet. When you get to the rocks here in Washington, you get really slippery, wet rocks, which any tire, for the most part, has struggles with that type of scenario. So in the rocks, I would give these things a solid 8 for sure. There's definitely room for improvement, but airing down, and you know what? I'm gonna change that to a 9 just because of the sidewall, because we have jammed these things into rocks, sharp rocks, repeatedly. There's chunks out of them, and still no issues. And I've ran this thing totally flat on the rim multiple times, and I clean out the bead, I air it back up, and I've had no issues with it, which is super, super impressive. So 8 or 9. I'm changing it 8 or 9. The only thing that's going to make it better is going to that sticky tire or competition tire. This tire has a fairly unique sidewall lug pattern that's very different than a traditional mud terrain where it has the lugs that are kind of square that come down. It has a bunch of swoops and different levels of tread that kind of come up. And personally, I'm on the fence on if I like the look of it, but it does work really well. The only thing that I really could complain about on this tire is I really wish the compound of the tread, the rubber compound, was a little bit softer. This being a 40,000 mile warranty tire, there's absolutely no way that they could make the tread compound or the rubber compound on this tire any softer. So the bottom line on this tire is it is a really fantastic all-around mud terrain tire that does really well in everything, is not really a specialist in anything. I like these tires enough that I will probably run them until they are bald and no longer give me enough grip on the rocks that it forces me to buy another tire. Well, that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you are not a subscriber, make sure you take the time, hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out. Leave me some comments on your favorite mud terrain tire and why. And if you have experience with this, maybe the opposite experience that I have, go ahead and leave that down in the comment as well. And if you want to follow me on social media, I am at MuddyBeards4x4. We got a website, muddybeards4x4.com. You get stickers, shirts like this guy right here. We got discount codes for Barn 4-Wheel Drive, Yankum Ropes, and a couple other companies. Links are in the description for that. And until next time, guys, we will see you on the trail.
Rage on that beat, going crazy.